The first time it happened, it felt like paranoia, a whisper in the trees, a misplaced footstep that didn't belong to the narrator. They were miles deep into the Elk Ridge Forest, a vast, under-trafficked wilderness nestled somewhere between Oregon and Northern California. The trees were thicker than usual that summer, casting long shadows across the pine needle floor. The narrator, an avid solo hiker who used these escapes to silence the noise of daily life, carried only the essentials: compass, knife, water, trail mix, a GoPro strapped to the chest used more for journaling than content. That day, everything felt wrong. Birdsong died out the deeper they went. The crunch of their boots on dry leaves echoed too clearly. They stopped more than once, convinced someone was following, yet every time they turned, there was only empty forest, until they reached the creek. It was bone dry. That creek, the one that always flowed this time of year, now sat hollow and cracked, and on the far side, etched into the bark of a half-dead pine, were 5 long gashes, deep, deliberate, and fresh. The air smelled metallic, unnatural. But the narrator pressed on. That night, they camped in a clearing miles from the nearest trail. At 3:07 a.m., the GoPro recorded something breathing just outside the tent, something that never left tracks. After the first incident, the narrator returned home, but the forest came with them. The sound of wind through leaves lingered in their ears at night. They began waking at exactly 3:07 a.m., heart pounding. Every time they closed their eyes, they saw 5 claw marks carved into wood. They tried to rationalize it. A bear, maybe a mountain lion. But their hikes continued, and so did the presence. Each time, it followed. Sometimes they'd hear it running beside them, silent, powerful strides that never revealed a body. Other times, it waited, watching from behind trees too narrow to hide anything. They could feel its eyes, its malice. Once, they dropped their compass in panic, and when they turned to pick it up, it was gone, replaced by a rock, and under that rock, a small pile of animal teeth, perfectly clean. The narrator stopped telling their friends about it. They only laughed or offered medication, so they started hiking farther, deeper, into places where no trails existed. It was on a trip to Cradle Hollow when things escalated. The narrator began the hike at sunrise, alone as always. The woods were unnaturally silent. Even the insects seemed to avoid this place. After 5 miles, they blacked out. When they woke, it was sunset. Hours lost. Backpack half empty. No wounds, no sign of struggle. But when they checked the GoPro footage later, it was corrupted between 11:34 a.m. and 5:01 p.m. The only frame visible was a single, jittering image that flashed for less than a second. It showed the narrator standing perfectly still in the woods, eyes wide, mouth open in a scream. But behind them, something massive and grey stood just at the edge of the tree line. Its limbs were too long. Its face lacked features, just a smooth, skin-like mask stretched where a face should be. And in its hand, it held the narrator's compass. They returned again, months later. By now, they were obsessed. Sketches of the creature littered their walls, GPS maps, notebooks of handwritten accounts and nightmares. It had become their life. That trip, they took a different approach. No trail, no equipment, no tech. Just a disposable camera and a hunting knife. They entered the woods at dawn, hiked until they found the 5 gashes again. But this time, something was different. A new path had appeared, one that wasn't on any map. A narrow corridor between blackened trees that seemed to pulse with some unnatural force. They followed it, and the woods changed. Trees shifted behind them. Roots writhed subtly. The sun never moved. The deeper they went, the more warped the world became. Sounds distorted. Their shadow disappeared entirely. Then the path ended, at a door. Just a doorframe standing alone in the forest. No structure, just wood, cracked and wet with something dark. The narrator stepped through. The forest beyond the door wasn't the same one they knew. Everything was wrong. Trees were too tall, their tops vanishing into a pitch-black sky with no stars. The air tasted of blood and static. They could hear whispers again, clearer now, saying their name in bursts of static and growling. Everywhere they looked, there were symbols carved into the bark. Triangles inside circles, spirals ending in sharp angles, things that hurt to look at. They walked for hours until they reached a clearing. In the center was a structure, a cabin made entirely from bones. Animal, human, uncertain. Smoke curled from its chimney even though there was no fire. They stepped closer. Inside, they found their old compass, their knife, the GoPro, everything they had lost on every previous hike, stacked in a pile beneath a crude altar built from vertebrae, and resting on that altar was a fresh set of clothing. Their clothing, still warm. They ran. Branches slashed at them, roots clawed their boots. The sky screamed. Time bent and stretched. The woods changed around them, twisting paths, erasing direction. And just when they thought they were lost forever, they woke up, in their tent, back in Elk Ridge. It was daylight. Birds were chirping. Everything looked normal, except the compass was back in their pack. The GoPro had a new file. It showed footage of them standing in the bone cabin, eyes black, smiling, and the thing behind them, tall and featureless, placing a hand on their shoulder. They stopped hiking after that, but it didn't matter. It followed them anyway. In mirrors, in reflections of car windows, on their back porch at 3:07 a.m. They tried to leave town. It followed. Changed cities. It followed. The GoPro still recorded at night, even when it wasn't turned on. Every morning, new footage appeared of the narrator sleepwalking, always toward the woods. Eventually, they accepted it, prepared one last hike, left a note behind for no one. They returned to Cradle Hollow, wearing only what they needed. No camera, no map, only the knife and the clothes the creature had left for them. They walked for 3 days. The trees welcomed them now. Shadows didn't retreat. The forest breathed with them. They found the door again. It was already open. They walked through, and this time, they didn't come back. Months later, another hiker found something near Cradle Hollow, a camera. Inside, a note with 5 words scratched in shaky handwriting. Do not hike alone. Ever. The footage showed the forest at night. Heavy breathing. A whispering sound that grew louder. Then static. Then a voice. Not the narrator's. Deep and guttural. One followed. Now 2 remain. And in the final frame, a tall, faceless shape standing in the distance, with 2 shadows stretching from its feet.